To start with, we need to make our yeast mixture. We want to do that to make sure that our yeast hasn't expired. So we need 1.5 cups of warm water. So I've got a cup of cold, and I'm going to mix that with 1/2 cup of water out of the jug that's boiled. The ideal temperature for yeast is around 32 to 34 degrees. If you don't have a thermometer, you can check that using just by dipping a finger in, and it should be just above body temperature. A bit warm, you might need to add a bit more cold water. As you can see, mine is about 33 degrees, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So to that we want to add a tablespoon of sugar. The sugar is what's going to feed the yeast and start the fermentation process. So we'll just give that a wee whisk. Doesn't need to be completely dissolved. And to that we're going to add our dry yeast. You need 1.5 teaspoons, which is the equivalent of 1 package of yeast. You just want to sprinkle that so you don't get any big clumps. They will dissolve, it'll just take a little bit longer. And a half, so 1.5 teaspoons of our dried yeast. And then we're just going to give that a wee whisk to dissolve it. To start it dissolving, mix it in, make sure there aren't any big lumps. And then we're going to put that aside for 4 to 5 minutes until it starts to it'll start to rise at the top and foam. It'll form like a wee island floating there, which you'll see shortly. While we're waiting for that to start foaming, for that process to start, we're going to weigh out our flour. So I've got my Kenwood mixing bowl here ready to go. We need 4.5 cups of flour. I'm using a high grade flour. It's generally what I buy because I do a lot of baking, cakes, biscuits, bread. I just prefer it. 4 and a half. There we go. And to that we want to add 2 teaspoons of salt. Got 1 and 2. Now for the mixer, mine's a Kenwood, and this is one of my favourite attachments. It's a scraper beater, so these edges are a soft silicone, and so when it beats it scrapes down the sides. I can't live without it. If you want one, go online and order one. They're worth every penny. So just sort of, I'm just giving my flour and salt a little mix there, and I'm going to make a well in the middle. And into that well will be where we pour our yeast mixture when it's ready. Okay, you can see yeast is starting to rise to the top. It's dissolved, and it's what we'd call foaming. So you can see there's a lot on the surface there. Whisk. Right, now it's ready to add to our flour mixture. So we're going to pour that into our well. And we're going to turn on the mixer and make that into dough. Okay. Right, at this stage we need to start adding some butter. So I've got 60 grams of softened butter. We're going to add that in small amounts into the dough. You can change your stand mixer to a dough hook now if you have one, or if you want. I'm actually just going to continue with my scraper beater I really like the result it gives, a really nice soft well mixed dough. And the benefit of doing this in your mixer is that you won't have to knead it by hand. So let's just continue adding this butter in small amounts, and it won't be long before our dough is ready to set aside to rise. Alright, as you can see, that dough's formed a nice ball. The sides of the bowls are fairly clean. So that's ready to set aside to knead. Not to knead, sorry, to rise. So I've got just a wee bit of oil in the bottom of a bowl here. And you just want to, I'm just make sure you can see it in here. You just want to make sure that oil is spread all around, because you don't want your dough to stick to the bowl. So wipe that right up to the top. There we go. Perfect. Just grab this. Should come out. Hopefully it'll come out in one beautiful big ball there. It's nice and soft and warm. Perfect. There we go, look at that. Alright, you can put that aside now and leave it to rise. And you want it to double in size. That normally can take up to an hour for that to happen. You can leave it longer if you get a work call or something you need to do in between. But yeah, so just pop that aside, pop a towel over the top. You don't want it to dry out on the top, and you don't want any flies to come and land in there. Your dough should have risen, like mine, more than twice the size that it was when we left it last. You probably don't want it to rise. This has probably risen a little bit too much. I had a meeting at work, so I had to go do that. So what you want to do is just take this out of the bowl. You'll see all that air falls right out of it. It's nice and soft. You can give it a little bit of a knead if you want, just to get the air bubbles out, reduce it back to a normal size. There we go, it's a little bit warm. Beautiful. Got a bit stuck on here. We don't want to miss out on any of that dough. See if we can get that off. Look at that. Easy. Perfect. Alright. Now, this recipe says you can make 8 big pretzels. I don't want mine quite that big, so I'm going to go for more than that. Let's see if we can get kind of a circle here. It's time to divide our dough into the number of pretzels that we want to make. The recipe says it will make 8 large, but here I've decided I'm going to make 4 large and 8 small. Now it's time to roll out and shape your pretzels. You want to make a long rope, approximately the width of your finger. When you've got the desired length, shape it into a pretzel. At this stage you also need to have put a pot of water on to boil. You need at least 8 cups. Okay, so we need to put, we need 2/3 of a cup of baking soda into our pan of boiling water. Yep, so let's just do that quickly before we move on. It's a lot of baking soda. Make sure you've got enough before you start. You don't want to get to this point. Find you got to go to the shop. Alright, So into our water. That's fun. Is we need 1 egg yolk. So just adjust that up a bit. There we go. So I've just got a regular egg here. I'm just going to put the white into 1/2. Now you don't have to be perfect here. This is just an egg wash. And the yellow in the other half. Right, we're going to mix 1 tablespoon of water in with our egg yolk. And then we're going to give that a quick whisk. And that's just going to be our wash. That's our egg wash before we cook them. Alright, so my water's not quite boiling yet. So let's roll these ones out. Alright, as you can see, the water is what we're calling a rolling boil. And we want to put each pretzel into the water for about 30 seconds, which is not very long. I don't know if there's an easy way to get them in there. Let's see. Let's chuck a couple in there. Okay, and that's about long enough for that first one. Get that out and put that on our tray. That second one, yeah, that's good. Alright, moving on. Only boil your pretzels for 20 to 30 seconds. Egg wash on these guys. So just using your pastry brush, just slop that all over. That's just going to help it get a nice golden brown in the oven. And the other thing in New Zealand we don't have, or I've never seen, pretzel salt. So I've got some Marlborough sea salt flakes, which I'm going to give a go. Salt. Let's have a look. Marlborough sea salt flakes. Just going to sprinkle a few of those on, not too much. Finished product. Look at those. I'd say that's a success. Very happy with how those have come out.